Morning rises softly over Wadhurst, East Sussex, painting gold over dew-soaked fields and whispering through centuries-old oak trees. At the heart of 11 rolling acres stands a stone farmhouse, weathered, calm, and utterly alive. This is Praise Acres, where engines, riffs, and nature found harmony. Today, we'll step into Praise Acres, Jeff Beck's countryside kingdom, where music met machinery and British rock met rural peace. But before this quiet sanctuary, there was the noise, the fame, the fire, and the fearless genius that rewired rock and roll itself. Let's rewind to where the legend of Jeff Beck truly began. Jeff Beck was born on June 24, 1944, in Wallington, Surrey, the son of a print shop worker and a primary school teacher. His father's hands were rough from ink and machinery, his mother's gentle from chalk and books. Together they passed down a mix of precision and curiosity that would define Jeff's entire life. Music crept into his world early. By 10, he was singing in his local church choir, his young voice echoing through cold stone walls. But the real spark came when he discovered the guitar, or rather, built one. He attended Sutton Manor School and later the Wimbledon School of Art, where he studied painting and design, though his true canvas was always 6 strings. At Wimbledon, surrounded by artists and free thinkers, Beck learned how to mix colors, shapes, and tones, lessons that would later bleed into his musical palette. He played in small bands around London, experimenting with rhythm and distortion, bending blues into something stranger, something alive. By 1965, London's rock scene was electric, and Beck was about to plug directly into history. When Eric Clapton left the Yardbirds, the band turned to Beck to fill the void. His arrival wasn't just a substitution, it was a shockwave. His tone, sharp, wild, unpredictable, turned pop-friendly rock into a battlefield of feedback and texture. Songs like Heart Full of Soul and Over Under Sideways Down exploded with sounds that no one had heard before. Beck didn't just play notes, he painted with noise. His 20 months with the Yardbirds became legendary. The band's only studio album, Roger the Engineer, 1966, climbed the charts and redefined what a rock guitar could sound like. Yet Beck's time in the group was turbulent. Prone to perfectionism and occasional mood swings, he was dismissed mid-tour in 1966, a casualty of genius that refused to be tamed. But exile didn't stop him, it freed him. In 1967, he formed the Jeff Beck Group, recruiting a then-unknown Rod Stewart on vocals and Ronnie Wood on bass. Together, they unleashed Truth, 1968, an album that critics later hailed as the birth of hard rock. It predated Led Zeppelin's debut by a full year, blending blues grit with guitar fury in a way no one had dared before. Songs like Shapes of Things and Beck's Bolero proved that volume and vulnerability could coexist. The follow-up, Beck Ola, 1969, leaned even heavier, but internal tensions tore the group apart. Undeterred, Beck kept evolving, forming new lineups, exploring new genres. The early 70s saw him merge jazz and rock with Rough and Ready, 1971, and his self-titled 1972 album. Then came Beck, Boggart, and a Piece, 1973, a supergroup experiment that produced a fiery cover of Stevie Wonder's Superstition. But it was 1975's Blow by Blow that cemented his legend. A fully instrumental record that hit number 4 on the Billboard 200 and proved a guitarist didn't need lyrics to speak volumes. 2 years later came Wired, 1976, an album so technically sharp it felt surgical, but still swung with soul. Through the 80s, he stayed unpredictable, drifting between rock, jazz, and electronica, defying industry trends like a man allergic to mediocrity. By 1985, Flash reunited him with Rod Stewart on People Get Ready, earning him a Grammy nomination. But it was 2010's Emotion and Commotion that brought him back to full glory. sweeping up 2 Grammy Awards for Nessun Dorma and Hammerhead. Decades after his first church choir notes, Beck's music still felt celestial. And if Eric Clapton was the professor of rock, Jeff Beck was the mad scientist, rewiring sound, reprogramming style, and proving that innovation always begins with curiosity. But behind the roaring amplifiers and the spotlight's glare, Beck's truest rhythm wasn't on stage. It was waiting for him in the countryside, surrounded by quiet, open land and the hum of a well-loved engine. Praise Acres Farm, a lasting legacy. Nestled in the rolling countryside of Bargersville, Indiana, Praise Acres stretches across 11 acres of open sky, soft grass, and timeless quiet. It's not the kind of place you stumble upon. It's the kind you feel. Just half a mile west of Mallow Run Winery, the air here smells of earth, oak, and distant vines. What was once private farmland has since grown into something larger, a nature preserve, a retreat, and a tribute to simplicity. Praise Acres was envisioned as a space where nature and community could coexist without pretense. No loud festivals, no bright lights, just the hum of bees, the rustle of deer through the fields, and the slow rhythm of a place that refuses to hurry. The centerpiece is the Barns at Praise Acres, a rustic wooden structure that serves as both a gathering hall and sanctuary. Inside, the scent of pine mixes with the echo of footsteps on polished floors. Weddings, yoga retreats, or community dinners all share the same soundtrack. Wind through the beams and laughter that never needs amplification. It's the kind of place where even silence feels like music. While Indiana may seem an ocean away from Beck's native England, it carries that same pastoral soul he always cherished. Wide skies, honest work, and beauty that doesn't demand attention. Here, nature isn't just scenery, it's the main act. The farm encourages guests to walk, breathe, and simply be. No deadlines, no schedules, just the slow unfolding of the day. And though his later years were spent in England, at his Grade II listed estate, Riverhall in Wadhurst, East Sussex, Praise Acres stands as a symbolic extension of that same spirit. Places where creativity met countryside, and legacy found its roots in soil rather than spotlight. It's the rare kind of place where time slows down without losing meaning, where you can sense the presence of a man who once made guitars wail, yet ended his story in whispering peace. Because whether it was at Riverhall or here in Indiana, Jeff Beck's idea of heaven always came with an open road, a workshop, and a good engine rumble in the distance. And speaking of engines, let's step inside that side of his soul next, where horsepower met artistry, and cars became his other kind of music. Car collection. Few cars captured Beck's spirit quite like his 1962 Chevrolet Corvette, the final model of the first-generation C1 series and one of America's most iconic sports cars. Under the hood lay a 327 cubic-inch V8 engine pushing out 360 horsepower, capable of hitting 0 to 60 miles per hour in just under 6 seconds. Lightning fast for its era. The car's market value today? Around $150,000 to $200,000, depending on originality and condition. Beck's Corvette wasn't a trophy, it was a companion. The kind of car that made noise even while standing still. Cruising through Sussex country lanes, Beck said it felt like playing a blues riff on wheels. Raw, emotional, and unapologetically alive. Then came his prized 1932 Ford Coupe, the holy grail of hot rod culture. Originally worth a few $1,000s in its day, this black beauty now commands $250,000 or more at auctions for custom builds of Beck's caliber. Under its glossy, hand-painted exterior sat a supercharged V8 engine capable of producing more than 400 horsepower, all wrapped in curves that screamed rebellion. Beck didn't buy this car for prestige. He rebuilt it himself. Friends recalled him spending entire nights in overalls, a wrench in one hand and rockabilly music in the background. This wasn't just a car, one of them said. It was his sculpture in motion. It embodied everything Jeff loved: craftsmanship, danger, and rhythm. If the coupe was Beck's anthem, the 1932 Ford Roadster was his encore. Lighter, leaner, and stripped down for freedom, the Roadster became his go-to for warm weather drives. No roof, no frills, just pure, open-road energy. Its custom flathead V8 delivered around 375 horsepower, and the lightweight build made it feel like flying just above the asphalt. The Roadster today sits in the $180,000 to $220,000 range for collectors, but to Beck, it was priceless. He loved the Roadster's unfiltered feel. No soundproofing, no air conditioning, just the wind, the engine, and the hum of possibility. If the coupe was the stage, Beck once joked, the Roadster was the encore. And just like his cars, his guitars carried his fingerprints, literally and spiritually. Each one customized, restored, and played with the precision of a craftsman and the heart of a poet. Guitar legacy. Over the decades, his collection grew into one of the most admired in music history, a museum of innovation, craftsmanship, and personal evolution. Among his most iconic instruments was the 1954 Fender Esquire, a minimalist single pickup guitar that became his weapon of choice during his time with the Yardbirds. It was through this guitar that Beck helped invent the language of psychedelic and experimental rock. Then came the 1959 Gibson Les Paul, acquired in 1968, its warm, resonant growl shaping the foundation of truth and Beck-ola. It was the guitar that bridged blues and hard rock, its sound thick enough to punch, yet expressive enough to cry. Another treasure, his 1954 Gibson Oxblood Les Paul, with its deep red finish, became one of his most recognizable stage companions during the Beck, Bogart, and Appice era. That guitar wasn't just played, it was commanded. From 1969 through the late 70s, Beck often wielded his beloved 1954 Fender Stratocaster, a bright, agile counterpart to his Les Paul. The Strat became his voice for fusion and jazz rock explorations on Blow by Blow, 1975, and Wired, 1976, its tone capable of whispering, crying, or screaming, sometimes all within the same song. But perhaps the most defining piece of his arsenal was the custom Telegib, a one-of-a-kind hybrid crafted by luthier Seymour Duncan. With a Telecaster body and a Les Paul neck, it merged two worlds, Fender's clarity and Gibson's sustain. Beck used it to record "'Cause We've Ended as Lovers," achieving that lyrical, bending tone that felt more human than mechanical. In January 2025, Christie's London hosted a landmark auction of over 130 of Beck's guitars, amps, and memorabilia. The event raised nearly £9 million, approximately $11 million, proving that his influence extended far beyond his lifetime. Among the highlights, the 1954 Gibson Oxblood Les Paul fetched over £500,000, while the Fender Stratocaster used on Blow by Blow sold for a staggering £1 million. Collectors from around the world competed to own a piece of his genius, not just instruments, but relics of a sound that changed music forever. But behind every masterpiece, there was also a mind for craft and control, and the fortune that came from decades of sound, sweat, and skill, income, and net worth. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $25 million, a fortune built not on commercial flash, but on 6 decades of relentless creativity and technical genius. His earnings stretched across a lifetime of boundary-pushing work. From his early days replacing Eric Clapton in the Yardbirds, 1965, to fronting the Jeff Beck Group with Rod Stewart and Ronnie Wood, every stage of his career added a new chord to his financial symphony. His innovative solo projects fused blues, jazz fusion, and instrumental rock, setting him apart as one of the few artists whose success wasn't dependent on lyrics, just tone, touch, and emotion. Albums and royalties, the heartbeat of a legacy, $10 to $15 million. The largest share of Beck's income came from his album sales and publishing royalties. Landmark releases such as Truth, 1968, Blow by Blow, 1975, Wired, 1976, and Emotion and Commotion, 2010, sold millions of copies worldwide. With the advent of digital streaming, his catalog continues to earn significant royalties through Spotify, Apple Music, and film licensing, keeping his sound alive for new generations. His publishing rights, meticulously managed, remain a steady income source for his estate. Concert tours and live performances, the global stage, $5 to $8 million. Touring was another cornerstone of Beck's income. From the 1970s through the 2010s, he embarked on sold-out world tours, often performing with icons like Stevie Wonder, Tina Turner, Eric Clapton, and later Johnny Depp. His 2007 tour with Clapton, Together and Apart, grossed several $1 million alone. Beck's shows weren't flashy spectacles. They were masterclasses in tone, where every ticket sold felt like an invitation to watch a genius at work. Jeff Beck's financial success was never about extravagance. He didn't chase commercial trends or celebrity endorsements. Instead, he built wealth through craftsmanship, integrity, and timeless artistry. Every dollar earned came from something he built, played, or perfected. And while his earnings told one story of mastery, his personal life revealed another. A life grounded in love, solitude, and the simple joys of home. Personal life and death. Beck married Patricia Brown in 1963, long before the world would know his name. The union was young love born out of the working-class rhythm of post-war England. But by the time he joined the Yardbirds in 1965, fame had begun to pull his life in a different direction. Constant touring, studio demands, and creative tension took their toll, and by 1967 the marriage had quietly ended. It was a pattern familiar in the rock world, the dreamer outgrowing the walls of ordinary life. During his Yardbirds years, Beck began seeing Mary Hughes, an American model and actress. Their relationship offered a rare glimpse of the softer side of a man often perceived as moody and elusive. The pair lived together briefly in London, but Beck's focus, as always, returned to music. Still, Hughes left a mark. She was one of the few people who saw him not as the six-string genius, but as the quiet, mischievous tinkerer who could spend an entire night rebuilding a carburetor just for fun. By 1968, Beck found something steadier in Celia Hammond, a British model and animal rights advocate. Their relationship lasted nearly 18 years, an eternity by rock and roll standards. Hammond's elegance and compassion balanced Beck's intensity, and she even appeared on the album cover of Truth, the Jeff Beck Group's 1968 masterpiece. Together, they lived quietly in the English countryside, surrounded by animals, engines, and guitars. While the romance eventually faded, their respect for one another endured for decades. Then, in 2005, Jeff Beck met Sandra Cash, a woman 20 years his junior, who shared his love of simple living and country life. They married in an intimate ceremony at his Riverhall estate in Wadhurst, East Sussex. Friends often remarked that Sandra brought warmth and calm into Beck's later years, the kind of peace that fame rarely grants. The couple never had children, but their bond was one of genuine devotion. Beck remained intensely curious until the very end, still touring, recording, and collaborating with artists half his age. In 2022, his unexpected musical partnership with Johnny Depp produced the album 18, a project born of mutual respect and creative kinship. It would become his final studio work. On January 10, 2023, the world stopped for a moment. Jeff Beck passed away at a hospital near his Riverhall home after a sudden battle with bacterial meningitis. He was 78 years old. Within minutes of the announcement, tributes flooded social media, not from PR teams, but from musicians who owed him their sound. Jimmy Page, his longtime friend and fellow guitar legend, wrote, "The six-string warrior is no longer here for us to admire the magic he could weave around our mortal emotions. Jeff could convey music from the supernatural. His technique was unique. His imagination seemed limitless." Mick Jagger mourned a wonderful man and one of the world's greatest guitarists, while Ronnie Wood called him a band brother he would miss terribly. Across generations, from blues icons to metal shredders, the message was the same. Jeff Beck wasn't just great, he was irreplaceable. His funeral was held on February 3, 2023, at St. Mary's Church in Beddington, Sutton, not far from where he grew up. The pews read like a history book of British rock. Eric Clapton, Rod Stewart, Tom Jones, Ronnie Wood, David Gilmour, Bob Geldof, Robert Plant, Chrissie Hynde, and Johnny Depp, who had spent his final months as Beck's closest friend, all gathered in quiet grief. Jimmy Page delivered the eulogy, calling Beck the silent leader, the one who taught us all to listen differently. After the service, a private burial took place at Riverhall, attended only by Sandra, Johnny Depp, and the couple's loyal dog. Beck was laid to rest beneath the English sky he loved so much, surrounded by the trees he planted, the cars he built, and the land that had become his refuge. His passing left a silence in the music world that even the loudest guitar could not fill. Yet for those who knew him, or simply felt his music, Jeff Beck never really left. Every note he bent, every tone he coaxed from steel and wire, still hangs in the air somewhere, timeless and alive. He once said that music wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about chasing the sound you hear in your head and never quite catching it. Perhaps now, finally, he has. If you've enjoyed this journey through his world of music, engines, and timeless artistry, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive, stories of legends who shaped sound, style, and soul. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep listening for the echoes that never die.